Welcome to The People's View, a program dedicated to discussing local, state, and national issues and their effect on the American people. The People's View provides a platform for state representatives and national figures to present their viewpoint. Whether it's social, economic, or financial topics, you'll hear it on The People's View.
Hello and welcome again to People's View, and today we have Representative Peter Silva, who's the House Majority Leader. And Pete, you're running again.
I'm doing it again.
How is it?
I guess I'm like you, a glutton for punishment, Carl.
We got a lot of people that are rerunning again, and I think we need these people back. We did a hell of a good job this year.
I agree. I said from the beginning, and it looks like it's going to pan out that way, I was going to do 3 terms. I don't think you could do anything in 1 term.
No.
You just, if you are doing it logically, you should use it as a learning experience. You get in there, you know, you and I sat next to each other the first term, and you're learning a whole new language, the way things run. And I can remember even procedurally, I thought in the beginning it was kind of hokey, some of the things they did, but if you didn't do that, it would be chaos, especially with 400 people in there. So you learn stuff, you figure out what you like, what your niches are, what maybe is realistic to do to you know, that's one of the problems I had this year was some of the people putting in 30, 40, 50 bills. It just...
That was too much.
Just too much.
Yeah. I think, well, there was almost 2,000 bills total that were put in there. A lot of them were combed out, but, you know, people tried to, I don't know whether get their name on there or what, but they had some very small items in there that really...
Well, plus I don't know about it, you know, being on judiciary. I'm not sure if it happened in your committee, but I can remember one day I actually had to do introduce 5 different bills for the people out there that don't know what we're talking about, because the rep who sponsored the bill or any of the sponsors didn't show up. So I would, you know, what do you think those have the odds on a committee? I didn't know anything about the bill. They're there to tell us, explain it to us, what's happening. I didn't know, so I just read it because I was on the end of the table. So I got elected, kind of. But you just can't, you know, again, the first year in, you learn that. If you're going to, you should need, you know, pick things that are really important to you and make sure you follow it all the way through.
Right. It is difficult because there's no real coordination of the schedule. And if you have a bill, you could supposed to be in 2 places at the same time. You can't handle that, but you should have some backup. I mean, that's why you have co-sponsors.
And again, none of them were there.
Yeah, yeah.
I was talking yesterday to former Speaker Donna Seidel, and I'll tell you, I'll definitely sign on to a bill. There's 1 or 2 that'll be out there this term coming up. I think we should go back to back before, I think it was 1977 or 76, something like that. We were an every other year legislative body. And that would eliminate a lot of that stuff. And I honestly think they should do it like we're a volunteer. I've been saying this lately. The beauty of our system is also the plague of our system.
Yeah.
I love the idea it's volunteer. Think of how much we'd be in trouble budget-wise if we're paying these people. I don't mind the 400. That doesn't bother me. But if you're going to have a volunteer system, guys like me, I have to go back to work.
Yeah.
You know, I just have to do that. So this next term coming up, the odds of me being in leadership are pretty much nil. I'll go up there to make sure I can keep a space, get on a minimal committee, but I got to go provide for my family.
And there are a lot of people that aren't running again because of that.
A lot of them.
Yeah,
Senators.
very good people. Very good people. I was just talking to Andrew Manouche today.
Yeah, he worked his tail off.
Yeah, very good. I hate to lose that talent. And hopefully we can at least have him contribute some other way. But you're right. Maybe that is the best way of doing it. I don't know how we get it all done, though. You know.
Well, you wouldn't have as many bills.
Well,
and even though we're the only legislative body, to my knowledge, that doesn't have a screening system.
Yeah.
And I believe that's correct in the country. So we actually give every single bill a hearing. All the other legislative bodies, they actually screen them.
Well, didn't you try to screen it? I think you were, the speaker did talk about some kind of a screening,
Well,
but it didn't really work
We
out that
had
way.
panels that we would
Yeah,
rate.
right.
We had a review panel that rated the bills as to how we would support them in leadership according to the platform. But we never turned the bill away.
No.
We would tell them, look at, the odds of this thing going anywhere are slim to none. And sometimes that had an effect. Sometimes they would say, okay, you know what, we won't do it. But we don't, if you want your bill to have a hearing, it'll have a hearing. And I don't have a problem with that. I think that if they knew they could only do it in one session, I think a lot of these bills come, well, they have nothing else to do, so they just throw these bills in the second part of the term. And of course, you get the rewrites of things that didn't make it through. But I think you'd probably cut them in half.
That might be a good idea.
And I even think go one step further. Why not have, just like they do with the town and city governments, the aldermen meet at night. Why not have the session start at 3 in the afternoon? You're more likely to talk to your boss and say, look, I got to be out at 3, and he'll be more lenient, that you can give him the whole morning and part of the afternoon, than being up there at 9 o'clock and being there, all day. I mean, there's ways you can get around it. I'd hate to limit, just like what we try to avoid, we almost have a class system. What you're doing now is you're basically having people like yourself that are retired, or people who are independently wealthy, or have a spouse that
Or have their own
supports them.
business that they can get away from. But,
Exactly.
or like a real estate or a lawyer has adjustable schedules to a certain extent.
And they're also the people who are in the workforce right now. There's things that they can relate to, that they're dealing with every day that maybe other people can't.
That's true. I mean, that's one of the things that the laws are getting a little bit more complicated because of all these different federal regulations too. You got to make sure that you're having the right words in there. So it takes a lot of time for some of these things to get through, and a lot of unintended consequences occur if you don't spend the time.
Well, the thing that got me really going on it was during the whole Perry thing. When I got involved with Perry, and I never realized that Texas is every other year.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah. I was down there for 5 years.
That's right. I mean, so think about it. A state that size that
could do it,
and it's the 10th largest economy in the free world. I mean, they do it. So we sure could do it. So I mean, I'm not sure how it changed or why it changed. I know that Dan McGuire put in a bill this past year and it got shot down in committee. But I think that's something we should
maybe you should look at that a little bit more careful. And your idea of holding them later in the day, that might be good too, although people will complain, well, you have to travel 2 hours to get to Concord or something like that. But
you're going to travel either way.
Yeah.
I know the story of, traveling at night. And again, there's nothing against the retired people that are in the system. I'm not saying that. But I think that to make it fair for everybody, especially if you have a volunteer system, if we're paying these people full, like Massachusetts, well, then, you show up in the morning and do your job. But you're not paying anybody. I mean, obviously, the $100 a year is, it's almost a joke.
That and the car reimbursement, that doesn't cover your expenses, really.
You almost need with the way gas is right now.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's something I'm going to look into this last term and see if...
You're going to stay on judiciary?
I can't.
I didn't think so. It's a tough committee.
Judiciary is, you know me, I had my big goal was to get this Pearl notification thing done in judiciary. I wanted to do something about gay marriage. I don't know that it's a lot harder to repeal something than to put it in. And I just, the way that they've, the way that the system has attacked morality in this country, people don't realize, I think, the unintended consequences by these things. It's not so much the marriage part of it itself. It's all the tentacles that go around it. And they're not going to stop. That's just the beginning. And that's the part that worries me about it, that people just don't see
where it's leading.
Big plan,
Yeah, where it's going. No, I kind of agree with you there. You hope you get on something. I know you, though, you're going to get involved in some of this stuff as best you can.
Well, see, it's funny because I learned the game now.
Yeah.
And I could probably do more not being on a committee, bouncing around and influencing different people than I can just sitting in that committee. And you know, for a while, I don't know if you remember, I kind of did that during the
I was
middle
going to
part of the
ask you
term.
about that. As you went from whip up to
Yeah.
majority leader, you learned a lot about the mechanisms, and you did influence a lot of different groups.
And that's probably the most important. I don't need my name recognition.
Yeah.
I just want to get the stuff done.
And you learned how to handle the media, too. I mean, that's a little
Took
interesting,
my
isn't
bruises,
it?
but yeah, that's an interesting process, for sure.
But you know, you were coming out with some right words, the ones that we got to see in the paper anyway.
Well, I said this, you know, now I'm taking a role with the Romney campaign, of course, but I want to do, every time I talk, it's like Sununu. I love what he's doing. And I think, you know, obviously Romney has to, and Ryan has to stay out of the fray as much as they can, but not too much. You know, you can't,
You gotta
perfect
get in there,
example,
yeah.
this whole thing right now with them hammering him on these tax returns.
Oh, yeah.
Why doesn't he just say, if I was him, you know what, I'll tell you what, let's make a deal right now. I'll turn over my tax returns the minute you turn over your college transcripts.
Or a whole bunch of other things that nobody's questioning him on.
Do it.
His passport, his Social Security card, all those other things.
Even on those, you know.
And nobody's asking him.
They don't do it. So it's a perfect gauntlet to throw
that's
down.
right.
I'll tell you what, let's meet tomorrow at noon. I'll give you my tax returns, and you turn over your Columbia transcripts and Occidental and Harvard, and let's see what you got.
Yeah. How did you get the scholarship there?
Yeah, exactly.
It's foreign student scholarship.
I'll tell you, I saw this thing, or I read it. It was like last week. This guy came out with it. You probably know what I'm talking about. And he said
He had a list of all these things.
all the different things, but the college transcript thing, he's convinced that it was because he was a foreign student, Indonesian.
Yeah.
And they cater to the diversity.
Right.
Diversity.
Right. That's how he got into those things. And nobody says anything. That's what bothers me about the media. And that's one of the reasons well, you and I started this program to see if we could get some of this stuff out.
And it's been more and more, you know, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but it takes some time sometimes for me, but I'm realizing now we're kind of going at it backwards. It's not so much the politicians or the party. We have to find a way to break the media. That's the key. The media really is you know, like I used to love one of the Three Stooges episodes, the Minister of Propaganda. You know, you don't realize, I think, how powerful it is.
Oh, it is.
If we could have just one more conservative, not even conservative, just tell the truth.
Yeah.
You know, I say this all the time. There's a new show out now. I don't know if you've been watching it. It's pretty good. And it's got its liberal slant, but I like what they're doing in it. It's called not the Newsroom. It's on HBO.
HBO. Okay.
It's going to win a lot of things, but it starts out the very first episode. As a matter of fact, they had a lot of it on YouTube. The guy who's the anchor, the star of it, just goes off in this like 10-minute dissertation about how the whole country is screwed up. And, you know, how people like Edward R. Murrow would deliver the news, not, you know, just, you never knew if he was a liberal. Yeah, just, here it is.
Yeah.
You know, Walter Cronkite, I grew up with him. The guy was the most wicked liberal there is. I didn't know that. He told you the news, and then that was it.
Yeah.
And I think if one more station can, you know, like take over CBS or NBC or something, and then just do that. Fire all those idiots like Chris Matthews.
Oh, yeah.
And just have just here's the news.
Yeah.
But nobody knows. That's the problem. They don't, you know, I got a brother-in-law that I remember, I think he wasn't even in politics yet, but I always was watching Fox News, and they were over for, it might have been during Thanksgiving or whatever. So he says, how do you watch Fox News? I mean, that's a horrible station. They get all their news from MSNBC, the newspaper. So in fairness, how would you know? If you don't click, like I do, as much as it pains me, I'll click and watch the other stations just to see what they're saying.
Well, I used to do that with Chris Matthews, and he's changed over the last 4 years as far as really going way out left. I mean, I understood him before, and sometimes I thought maybe his arguments made sense. I can't even look at him anymore.
Yeah, you're right. He came out of the closet, so to speak. Because I used to listen to him on Imus all the time.
Yeah.
Him, Tim Russer. I never knew that they were that
Tim Russett's a good one, and he was, yeah, he wasn't exactly conservative.
No, no, near the end he admitted he was a Democrat, but he was a little bit better at it.
Yeah.
But Chris Matthews, you're right. When he first came on IMUS, I didn't know he was this flaming liberal.
Yeah. And that's what all you're asking is some fair information. You don't have to spin it all the time. Well, we know what we're going to do. How are you going to run for campaign, and what are you trying to, you're going to get on some committee, or maybe find a way the speaker. Hopefully we get Bill O'Brien back.
Well, that's what I'm hoping. If Bill gets in, then there's several different positions you can do. I mean, I want to do something to stay involved and to, use my influence, if you will, as best I can. I think I can mentor. You don't know what the house is going to be made up of. There will be new people.
That'd be a real good job. You'd be real good at that.
Yeah, I want to mentor him a
little bit. Give him a little
more
guidance, and talk to him about your experiences. I think that'd be an excellent thing to do. And we have to group them together. The freshmen can get together by themselves, but they have to understand the whole picture better, because you can get some erroneous impressions fairly quickly if you don't understand what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
And we saw that with how many freshmen do we have this last year?
It was 167, I believe was the number. Now, that includes retreads.
Yeah.
I believe
people who came back.
I think the number was 125 of just
that were
brand
new, which was quite a lot.
Because I think when you and I went in, it was like 47.
Yeah, well, yeah, there
Something
weren't
like
too
that.
many people. I mean, we made it in, but
you could no one could have
Republicans.
estimated and calculated the impact that was going to have.
No. Well, I'm not sure what's going to happen this year, but it's going to be a tougher election, I think. It's going to see what happens.
I've been saying this lately. I don't think it's going to be what it was last time, no. But I think it's still going to be a supermajority.
Oh, really?
I really do. I think we're going to get something like 250. And the reason I say that is that a lot of the people that I see out there, that strangers, all the comments I get when they see the license plate so they know that I'm a rep, that's what I'm saying, a stranger. Otherwise, obviously, they know me.
Yeah.
I had this, it was a great incident actually at the Shell station about a week or so ago. I'm getting gas, and this woman pulls up behind me. She gets out of her car, and she said, this is not Speaker O'Brien's car, is it? And she just didn't get the lettering right. I said, no, actually, I'm the majority leader. He's actually the Speaker. She says, well, you know what? Can you do me a favor and just tell him he's doing a fantastic job, and I love his courage and his guts, and keep it up.
Good.
And every time, like, I'm around Bill and we're out, I've been to, like, fairs and stuff with him, there's no one throwing eggs at him.
No. And, people don't understand that who haven't gotten to know Bill or see him. Well, he's been on the program, but the way people keep saying that he's a bully and other things, just don't know him. I mean, he's a person that really can talk
But
to
see,
you.
even that, I want you to tell me one vote that we had this year that was against the platform, that we had unanimous support. What I'm trying to say is, without playing a game, you want to talk about bullies. How do the Democrats have certain votes that are 100%? Redistricting is a perfect example. Voter ID. How do you have, that to me is where a bully comes into play. We had people in our party vote against voter ID.
Yeah.
We had people in our party vote against the redistricting.
Also, the education reimbursement situation, too.
There's never been, if they go back and look, if there's ever been a committee chair that went against, first of all, the Democrats would never do that. So let's get that straight up front. They would never do it. But if they did do it, they'd have been replaced, just as Bill did. And as a matter of fact, I think a few of them, go too far. He was too lenient. During our whole CACR 12 debacle, there were friends of his that voted against what we had. And, that's the thing that we have to really work on this time. I mean, the Liberty Group do fantastic work. I agree with almost everything that they do. But they have to learn, and any group, doesn't matter what it is, Every time you go for 100% of something, you get 0. That doesn't mean you should sell your soul, you should bend your principles, but you need to be a politician, unfortunately, to take incremental steps. If you don't do that, that's why the Democrats are so united, because they consider themselves persecuted. So they stick together as a group, and it's like, you know, thank you, sir, may I have another? They keep getting hit in the face. And I'm not saying we need, I don't ever want to be like that, but you also don't want to do all this work. And as I've said before, the part that frustrated me with that whole thing, there was no way in God's earth that that was going to pass on a ballot, because no one understands it. But what it would have done is, from the day it passed until November 6th, or whatever the date is, you would have had publicity about the issue.
Right.
And people would, one of the questions in that survey I was telling you about was about, you know, public funding of education or government supervision of education. I think we should give more back to the towns. Let there be local funding and just give them more control at the local level. And that's what that would have done. Now we have nothing. So right back to square one. And if anything I would want to do when I got in there next time is to tell people before we start out, have a couple seminars, to give examples. Every single one, including the leader, Mark Warden, of the Free Staters, agreed with me afterwards. The problem is I didn't have enough time to talk to them beforehand. George Lambert, in his credit, George went with us. And you know George is very strong liberty-minded. But he realized that I had a point, that you know what? Let's get this out. Let's let them, it's not going to pass. I'm not going to bend my principles. But we'll get some publicity over it. So I think if I learned anything this past term, that's the key. If we can give examples and we can get out early, because now you have the facts. You know, I can get a guy like John Burt to tell them what's going on. I can get almost all of them that were involved. You know, they understand that I'm on their side, and we need them. They're great votes.
You know, maybe we ought to have more of that on this show, where we have
Probably
a discussion like that. We'll get, you know, 4, 5, 6 people, and we talk about this issue and talk about giving it some publicity and talk about the different viewpoints. Maybe that would help.
No, I think that's a start, because it's very confusing.
And if you 1 or 2 people, we might just get a whole
yeah, it'd be fun, actually.
Yeah, it would be.
It's still to me is other than right to work, it's not so much the principle of it, of the CACR 12, which would bore anyone to death. It's the way that it went down. That's what bothers me. It was unnecessary.
Yeah.
And we don't want that to happen again, because next time it could happen on something more important. It could have happened on voter ID. The right to work thing, I did do a study on that.
Oh.
And, you know, we have a lot of union members that are in the House. And that's part of the problem with that. Another bill I'd like to see get passed is, I think that it should be, if there ever was a conflict of interest, if I'm a state employee and I'm voting on my pension, we need to have a bill passed that if you're a state employee, you cannot vote on anything pension related, or if you have a spouse, that is. We fill out those forms in the beginning of the year. It's an easy thing to do. They have to recuse themselves during those votes. It's that simple. They can vote on everything else, but not that. And I don't know how, you know, the odds of passing are the same thing as right to work, but with a Republican governor, we passed the right to work. We just didn't override the veto.
Yeah.
So the right governor in there, all we need is 1 vote over the top. So those are 2 things that I'm really eyeing on this term.
Well, let's hope you have something that you're able to do on that, and we all get reelected and give that majority to the governor.
As the Godfather says, I'm going to make an offer they can't refuse.
Well, thank you very much, Pete.
Yeah.
And we'll be talking more. You'll be
see you on the
continuing as host, co-host. We're going to be rotating around with you and me and Kevin Avard.
Look forward to it.
And it'll be an interesting time. This election is going to be an interesting time.
It will be.
Okay. Well,
All right, Carl.
again.
Thanks again.
And thank you for listening in. And don't forget, we're sponsored by the Nashua Republican City Committee, and their website is NashuaGOP.org, and look for the coming events and the things that we have on the website, which will refer to this program. Thank you again. Hello, this is Carl Seidel, and this is the People's View. People's View is sponsored by the Nashua City Republican Committee, and we try to have interesting interviews with people who are involved with political issues. If you want to find out more about the Republican Committee, go to their website at NashuaGOP.org, and you'll see all the events and replays of some of the earlier interviews that we've done on People's View. We also are having a stakeout affair on August 25th at the Crown Plaza. Please look at the website for the details. And we also meet starting in September on the second Tuesday of every month. Well, thank you. And today we have Representative Tim Twombly. Tim, welcome aboard. And tell us a little bit about how your first year was up there. I mean, you were part of the sweep in Nashua, and I think you got appointed to one of the more prestigious committees of the Finance Committee.
Well, from what I've heard, you're absolutely correct, and I've enjoyed the last couple of years. I heard that you don't get on the Finance Committee in your freshman year, but they did appoint me to it, and I've been very excited about that.
Your background, I think, helped.
I think so. I retired from BAE Systems after 32 years, and I was a financial analyst there, and I did a lot of budgeting and overhead analysis. So it just seemed to me like that was a perfect that was the place that I should ask for to the committee to be assigned to.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think we've done a lot up there to keep the financial end of it appropriate. I mean, this year we looked at what income was, and you guys had to say, well, that's all we can spend. And you did a good job at paring down the expenses by at least 11%.
Yes, we actually saved 11% on state spending. This wasn't just a decrease from some increase. This was a decrease from what had been spent. It really came out to about $850 to $895 million that we cut back on as far as spending was concerned.
That's quite a bit.
And that was, well, I believe that it's never been done since ever, you know, to actually cut it back like that. So it was a lot, but we had, in the prior 4 years, the budget had been increased 25%, and the people that were increasing it just for some reason decided they wanted to spend money on things. We didn't have the money available, so then they scurried around to try to figure out where they were going to get the money. So we had something like 100 new taxes and increased fees and that kind of thing that were brought in order to cover the money, you know, cover the need for the money because they were going to spend it. And so it was a field ripe to be cut.
Well, there were a lot of things that went on there just to balance the budget, because legally we had to balance the budget. I mean, I thought the worst thing was then when we got $25 million from the University of New Hampshire and then took out bonds to pay them back over 10 years. So that cost us, what, another $1 million in interest?
Yes. And as bad as that, or maybe even worse, was while they were doing that, they had to borrow $190 million in addition to balance for general expenses that we're now paying back. We're paying back the interest on that, plus the principal over 20 years. So that's in addition to what they borrowed from UNH.
That's something how they thought they could get away with all that. So you still have more of that cleaning up to do, tightening up, shall we say?
Well, we've got a few other things in the fire here. Couple things that didn't get resolved this year that we had a study commission. I'm in Division 1 on finance, and we are responsible for the budgets of about 40 different state departments. included in that is an art fund in cultural resources. We've had a couple of meetings on that, and so we've got some proposed legislation, I believe, for the beginning of the year. And another had to do with correctional industries. Correctional industries is it's an organization within the state prison system where inmates can go in and work on different projects, have them available to sell. And this last year, a man came in from Oregon or Washington, who had been involved in this kind of project out there on the West Coast, and they developed something like prison jeans or blue jeans. So the correctional people there were making blue jeans, and they were actually selling them. So they got some laws changed or whatever, because obviously we don't want to be competing with private industry, but we, the correctional industry people, are looking at different ways to make this self-sustaining so that they can expand the program, because as you and I know, we think that when people go to prison, or at least I always naively thought, when people go to prison, they're being remediated, they're being trained, they're going to come back and be able to contribute to society instead of breaking into houses or whatever they're doing. And lo and behold, I found that most of them are just warehoused up there, and that's not a good thing.
No, it isn't. And we're interested from the, as you know, I'm chair of the executive council in the county. We think that should extend to the county, and hopefully that worked into the legislation that you're proposing, so that the County Correctional Institute could participate in that too, because they need that also. I mean, they get some educational classes, and they do some work for some of the towns in Hillsborough County, but they don't really get any opportunity to do something industrial. You know, they do. We do have a little farm, but that's something else.
Yeah, and they've kind of let that grow smaller and smaller each year.
Well, right now, yeah, it's only for providing food for the nursing home, which is across the street from it. So it's not competing with all the local farmers who have their food stands out there. But there are, you said you are part of the Section 1 of the Finance Committee. What are the other two sections?
Well, there's Division 3 and there's Division 2. And one group works mainly on educational issues. The other one works with Health and Human Services.
That's the
biggest dollar-wise,
right.
the biggest, most important group in the whole finance organization, I would say.
I understand they have a lot of contracts to these nonprofit organizations. How many of those are, do you have a rough idea? I heard it was over 2,000.
I don't know that number specifically. Okay. I don't, but there are a lot of nonprofit organizations involved, which I wonder about the efficiency of that, because for every nonprofit organization you have, you've got the infrastructure of overhead costs. You've got a leader within each one. You've probably got an accountant and human resource person and all that. And it just doesn't seem, you know, from my business background, it doesn't seem very efficient or effective.
Well, I was wondering whether you people were holding the feet to the fire on that, about trying to get the HHS to combine those things, or to, you know, to let out contracts for some kind of conglomeration that would cut out some of that overhead of these many nonprofit organizations.
That would be a good idea. I'm not sure that.
Well, that's one thing. Maybe
that's an excellent idea.
I heard that was in somebody's mind, and I think that's a good idea, because we have a fairly small state. We don't need one thing for every county. You get a couple of counties to run, you know, the same kind of programs. I think it's much more efficient, and you have people who could, you know, back up other people. So in case you have, you know, sickness or whatever,
right.
Vacations, you have a better way of distributing the labor on some of these things. They serve a good purpose. I'm not trying to get rid of them, but I think that you don't need that many different ones.
Right now I know we have 10 they're called 10 community, 10, maybe it's behavioral. See, I'm not in HHS, so I can't really remember. But there's, there are several groups that within, I think, 10 different areas of the state. And here in the Nashua area, it's called Gateway Services. I'm not sure what they're called in other areas, and they administer.
Yeah, I've been to one of the committee meetings. I just wanted to see how they were run. And I was surprised at how many different organizations in Hillsborough County that handled a variety of things. It would seem to me that a lot of them could have joined forces and you know, serviced much more effectively than they have been. So, I mean, it's not that they're not doing a good job, it's that they probably could do a much more cost-effective job if they joined forces.
That would be the key, yes.
And your section, I mean, Division 1 has a variety of departments, which is probably just as bad as having one big department, or maybe even worse.
Yes, we have, you know, we have administrative services who handle finances and accounting. We have the state treasurer's office, and I think the state treasurer's office is operated very effectively, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
We have Department of Safety, Department of Transportation, just to name a few of the larger ones. But we go, and plus, of course, the judicial system comes before us too, and we provide funding for we provide funding for our justices, and then we turn around and we provide funding for another person within the state who has to hire public defenders for the people that the judges are listening to the, you know, all the offenses on, and sometimes I find that rather ironic, but
well, you have
people
to make
have
sure,
a right to be
that's right.
defended, you know. So
we have, and the others people have a right to get justice done.
yes.
So it's interesting, but I understand you had an approach that worked quite effectively with the Department of Justice, with holding some of the budget back until they put their telephone operation thing into play. And that worked out very well.
Yes,
I mean,
it did.
Even surprised them how well it worked out, didn't it?
Yes, yes. We now have a call center that will service the whole state. If anybody's got a question related to the court system, all they have to do is call the call center, and the people there know. Are
well known. Well, they know everything.
Yes.
They have worked. They took them from the different centers and brought them in. And my understanding is that by centralizing it, they're also finding out more about problems or potential problems that exist in the system, as far as people getting treated properly. They're hearing things that you know, that they didn't hear before because it was too segregated.
Yes, I have read some things about some of the justices were, you know, some are very strict, some and conservative, and some are very liberal, and so justice wasn't the same in one court as it was. You know, it was different from court to court, and that's not.
And some of the procedures were the way that people were handled were different.
Yes.
And I think they were even surprised about the information they got. And in 6 months, they did a beautiful job. I saw their, you know, when they had their show and tell, more or less, and took us around the operation. It was very impressive. And I think maybe that's a good way of doing it. We hold back on some of the budget money until you do something that we've been trying to tell you that you should have been doing 5 years ago.
Exactly, that makes your department just a little more effective.
Yeah.
And of course, I don't know whether they've completed it yet, but they're working on a video conferencing system.
Yes, it isn't complete yet. Hillsborough still needs to complete that. But we had some kind of television communication, but it wasn't, I guess, fitting into the whole system.
I see.
But that's going to be good, and it'll hopefully cut down on some other expenses in the sheriff's department.
It should help out the sheriff's
because you don't have to transport the prisoners back and forth to the jail. You can, I mean, to the courtroom. They can do it in the jail, and you do everything that way. And the judges can communicate to one another much more easily.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
I think
it really
you know,
should work. Oh,
in business, you've used Skype and things that hold meetings like that, and this is more or less the same thing. And you know, if you want to keep the judges talking with one another, this is a good way of doing it. So we're finally getting into modern communications. I don't know if you saw Charlie Arlinghouse's article in the Union Leader.
I have not read it, but I know he talked about something about our government being antiquated and it needed to be modernized. And I have to, without having read his whole article, I can say that having 3 liquor commissioners we have seen just recently is not a good idea. Who's at fault for $100,000 worth of fine wine disappearing?
Yeah, how about that?
It's really a puzzle. I'm going to have some questions to ask.
That's going to be interesting
come
where
February.
that goes. Nobody knows where, or if it even existed, they hadn't have a record of it or something or other.
It's
you know, so
it's just amazing.
I think you have a bunch of people pointing fingers at one another.
I think so.
You know, all around the circle. Well, we have a lot to do up there. I think the people that we have elected the last time have been a tremendous help in getting things done. There's a lot of nitty-gritty work that has to be done, yours especially in your committee, to be able to write the right legislation to correct some of these things.
And I was a freshman on this committee, but there are people, and I was very glad to be part of it. I've learned a lot, and I'll have even more to contribute starting in January. Mm-hmm. But we've got some, fortunately, they have some very experienced people that have been on the committee. You know, there's Chairman Ken Weiler. I can't name them all, but Ken Weiler and Lynn Ober, very good people.
Right. They've been on the committee. They've had experience, and that's what you need on these committees too. People with experience, but also the new people with new ideas, new vigor, if you will, to go after problems where some people might have thought, well, we tried that before. Well, let's try it with a different twist this time. And that's what I heard. A lot of people, young and old, you know. I mean, it's hard.
Yes.
If you're raising a family to serve in the legislature for $100 a year.
It is, but then we had Mary Linda Garcia, who was young, and she was there with her ideas. Dan McGuire, a very good contributor. Paul Samard, John Zabrowski. Had some great ideas. So you know, there's a lot of creativity on the group.
I agree, and I see that as a whole. And I hope we can get everybody back to continue this good.
I hope the voters will see it that way. Oh, by the way, I do have a primary September 11, and I'd love to have you vote.
Okay, well that's good. And can you tell people how to get in touch with you?
There's more than one way, but I think the best way is through my Gmail account, and that is Twombly for State Rep, with the words FOR and not the letter 4. So it's twomblyforstaterep@gmail.com.
Okay.
That comes in on my Android phone, so I see that all the time. I don't go out to my legislative website as much as probably I should, because it's so full of spam that comes in.
They don't do a good job at that.
They don't do a good job of filtering it at all.
No.
And then, of course, they can reach me at home by calling me or just sending me a letter. My address is 120 East Hobart Street, Nashua, New Hampshire, 03060.
And your phone number, if you don't mind?
My phone number is 888-4466. And I talk with people on the phone, and I read the letters that come. Things, as I said, out there on the legislative website, I may never see because it's so full of all the spam. But, the letters I always read, and I've gotten some great letters. I want to throw out a plug here for the adult what is it? The Adult School Learning Center. That's it. I think is one of the practice things they have their students do is to send the representatives letters.
Right.
And I've gotten several, and they're very good.
Yes, they are.
The students are thoughtful. They're working hard. They're after a GED, and they've got plans to do something more with their lives.
And they're learning English, a lot of them.
Yes.
English is not their first language.
It's
But they're doing well at that.
They are.
And I do agree with you that I received a number of those letters
Did you?
also, yeah. So, but there's lots of things that we're going to have to work on, and hopefully we'll all be back together again starting in January.
I hope so. As you know, we've got some really great legislators from the city of Nashua that are
Right.
serving up there.
Well, thank you for your time, Tim, and thank you, the audience, for listening in to the People's View. Don't forget, we're on every day of the week, and we have a new interview every week. So please stay tuned, and also look at the website at NashuaGOP.org, and you'll find a lot more information about the Republican Party in Nashua. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Cal.
you.